Justice Ginsburg spent a lifetime facing adversity and discrimination and overcoming it. Her personal struggles are ones that we as a community know all too well. But Justice Ginsburg was not deterred or swayed from becoming a lawyer, a litigator, a professor, and a United States Supreme Court Justice. And NAPABA is so proud that we were there to support her nomination for the United States Supreme Court. She was the best of us, striving for equality for all, showing us what America could and should be, promising a better tomorrow, being the change to achieve it, and doing it in such a way that led others to join. As a woman of first, her work ensured she was not the last. We have her to thank for making our hopes and dreams come true, and those to follow us. Justice Ginsburg's significant impact on NAPABA can be seen through her clerks and their engagement with NAPABA and the AAPI community.
On a June afternoon, I was living in New York at the time, so I took Amtrak down, and it looked like a short walk from Union Station to the Supreme Court. So I strolled along, but I didn't think about the fact that it was 90 degrees in DC and I was wearing a suit. And so by the time I got to the court, I was very hot, very sweaty. But I thought, previous clerks had told me that usually she has candidates meet with the clerks first and then, often gets significantly delayed before she even sees the candidate. So I thought, I'll just cool down while I wait. But when I got there, they said, she's ready for you right now. And so they immediately took me into her chambers and sat me down in front of her. And she looked at me and she offered me a nice hot cup of tea.
When you're talking to her, she has a sort of halting way of speaking. She takes long pauses between sentences. And so you have to be really careful not to interrupt her. You have to wait for her to finish her thought. And so I was super nervous about trying to give her lots of space, to talk. And so I remember going into the interview, and sure enough, that was kind of the way she spoke, in this sort of patient, sometimes halting style. And I joke that, I think I waited so long in between after she was done to respond to anything she said, because I was so fearful of interrupting her. On reflection, I think, it's emblematic of how careful she was about how she chose her words, both written and spoken. And I think perhaps we'd all do better to pause a little bit and think about what we're going to say before we say it.
So I got to the interview and we just spent the entire time talking about women's rights and civil rights issues. And it was a totally surreal experience, because I was talking to the woman who literally wrote the book on gender discrimination in the law. And the interview became even more surreal at the end when she ended up offering me a job, which I was obviously delighted to accept. The justice had two great loves in her life. She loved the law and she loved her family. I should say perhaps three great loves, because she also loved the opera. But she poured her heart and soul into her job as a justice. She was extremely hardworking.
Nowhere was this more indelibly impressed upon me than one day I went into her office. I was getting a case file and happened to see on her desk a memo that one of us had written her. And these are just internal memos. They're not being published or anything. But she had read the memo, but it was evident she had put all these faint pencil marks all over the memo, little typos, missing commas, different words that she would have used. And it was so interesting because she never handed these memos back to us. And so it was kind of a surprise to see that she had edited them and found all our mistakes. This was her way of processing information, and just her demanding that anything that appeared before her eyes, had to be really, really perfect. And it certainly was memorable to me that, you got to pay attention to the details.
What I found really astonishing was she was in fact a night owl, and she tended to work very late. she didn't feel the need to impose that schedule on you. She was very, very gracious and understanding about that, the fact that everyone had a different shape to their lives. Of course, the flip side of that is, when the work needed to be done, the work needed to be done. And so, probably the first time she and I were working together on something that required real concentration and a lot of writing, I actually went to her residence on the weekend because that was the most convenient time to work on it for both of us, because of appointments that she had and appointments that I had. But she was perfectly willing to make accommodations like that to help give priority to the work while not necessarily disturbing all the things that were natural to you as a person and, that you wanted to do and that she wanted to do. So I don't want to in any way suggest that she ever put the work second to anything else. The work to her was the most important thing.
That drive to succeed, she didn't let up even when she was ill. And so it was during my year that I was clerking for her that she was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I remember she came and told us the news in her chambers and that she was going into surgery shortly afterwards. And she was just so optimistic about the outlook and just so determined not to let this slow her down. And so, I think we were all obviously very shocked and sad by the news, but also because she was so upbeat about it, I think we felt very positive as well. And she was determined not to let it slow her down. She instructed us to send her opinion drafts and bench memos to her at the hospital and later when she was recovering at home. And we did. And less than 3 weeks later, she was back on the bench, firing off questions during oral arguments, churning out opinion drafts afterwards, just at her usual pace. And, I think she said this before, she wanted to make sure the world knew that she was alive and well, despite, what that Kentucky senator said about how she would be dead in 9 months. And of course, she outlived him. And, but it wasn't just a show, she really didn't miss a beat that year.
One thing that would break her out of that focus was always if there was a child around, particularly a grand clerk or a child of one of her clerks or former clerks. And she would always drop everything.
She always made time for her family. It was what was important to her. It gave her the ability to put in those long hours. She got strength and nourishment from those interactions and those relationships. It was really nice to see, and it reminded me of one of the most important things, which is your job is important, but the people around you are equally important, and you can't do one and neglect the other. She was a truly balanced person and modeled that behavior. So if she had a date or to go to the opera with a friend, she would put down her pen, and when it was time to go, the opinion would wait, the edits would wait, and she would go and spend time with the people that she cared about. And that's something that is so important to me, and I've tried to model her good example.
She really expected a lot from her clerks, but she also gave back a lot in return. And I remember when she had her surgery for pancreatic cancer, it was during my birthday, and traditionally, the justice celebrates the clerk's birthdays in chambers with a cake that her husband Marty would bake, and she would give a small gift to the clerks. And so that year, knowing that she would be at the hospital during my birthday, she left the gift with her secretary with a Post-it note on it saying, "Give to Sue on Thursday." And I think I still have the Post-it.
The work is what you communicate to the outside world about your abilities and your commitment to your work. But that equally important is your life and your life with your family, your life with your friends, your life of enjoyment. For Justice Ginsburg, that was her personal friendships, her enjoyment of opera, her companionship with her husband, her relationship with her children. It's different for everyone. But I really try to impart to those that I have the pleasure of working with that both are important. It's possible to have both. You can't have both in equal measure all the time, but over the long arc of your career, you should always be striving to have both, and you really can.
What I really loved about the justice's relationship with Marty was, how much Marty and her family were just part of her public and professional life. And she expected, our families to be part of our lives too. And so Marty was a frequent presence at the court. He would, come visit us in chambers. He would accompany her in the many events that she attended. He would sometimes call in the evenings, and ask the clerks, what time is Her Highness coming home? And the justice always included our significant others in the outings that we did, such as going to the opera with her or going to her home to Marty's famous gourmet cooked meal.
After my clerkship, in many ways influenced by her example that she set in her career and in her work, I decided to take a period of time staying at home with my daughter. And I had a newborn when I started at the job. And so it was just a very intense year to be juggling having a newborn with the professional opportunity of a lifetime. And so after that year, I made a lot of sacrifices in favor of work during the clerkship. And after that time, I wanted a period of time to get to know my daughter better and to be the father that I wanted to be. And there is no one in my entire life who was more supportive, actively supportive of that decision and talking it through with me than the justice.
She's a person, I always say, she's a person of small physical stature, a very slight person, but she was an absolute titan in terms of her imprint on the law and what she came sort of symbolically to stand for. An incredibly tenacious fighter, someone who wouldn't let illness define her or hold her back, someone who wouldn't let the stereotypes, of her time hold her back.
I like to think that in some way in my practice, I'm continuing to pay forward some of the lessons that she shared with her clerks and with others. And, it's an honor that's honoring her legacy.
Justice Ginsburg's positive influence and lasting impact on our grateful organization runs long and deep. To us, Justice Ginsburg was more than just an iconic legal giant. She also was personal advocate, an active encourager, and a genuine friend to NAPABA and the entire AAPI community. To her unrelenting support on the issues and causes that mattered most to the AAPI community, her rich relationship and legacy with NAPABA are certainly safe and sound with us. These treasured memories we have of Justice Ginsburg will undoubtedly serve to inspire, guide, and lead us in the days and years ahead. Thank you.